submitting it. And one thing that needs, besides checking that the images, the PDF are readable, and really are coming across the way you intended, you also need to check your links. And I did mention that in my last email, because I had to chase different people several times to be able to mark the work. And we're not going to do that again in assessment 2. We did that because it was assessment 1. It does take a long time until we wait for your response, and then we compile the marks, and it's not fair for everybody else who is waiting for marks. So please make sure that you check links are visible, easy to find, they work, and your submissions are looking the way you intended it to look.
Yep. With the links, when you share them, depending on where you share them to, one of the common things is you can say share to a particular person. But it might not be that person that is trying to access and mark your work. And so it's probably better to share a link that anyone with that link can load. And also preferably not with a timeline attached. So sometimes the links come through and they're available for download for 1 day or 5 days or 7 days or something. But it might take a week and a half before we get to yours to download it. And then we just get a warning message saying, sorry, it's no longer here. Or if you've moved it to a different location, the link no longer works. So make sure you put it somewhere that's not going to change and that it can stay there accessible to whoever has that link. Sorry, yeah, you were going to say something.
No, that's fine. No, that's absolutely fine. I was just going to say to Roman, one thing with experimenting and still making sure you're getting, I guess, the things that you need in there. One thing to consider with how you do page layouts is points of consistency with, say, headings, where the page number is, all that kind of stuff. What the human eye does is it orients itself to the document when you first look at it. And so what it's going to do then, as you flick through the pages, especially us web sort of, sometimes quickly flicking through, is the page heading should always be in the same spot if it's of the same nature of page, and then you can move it for, other stuff. The page number should always be the same place. Those aspects should always be consistent, and then you can change a lot of the other stuff, and it'll still have a consistency and a readability, because these key, the things that the eye needs to lock onto to orient itself in the page are there and staying consistent, and then you can kind of go crazy. And if you look at good design work in the visual space, it's the use of consistency and how and where it's used. So I know you use InDesign for some of your stuff. So with that, you create your master page with some markings or whatever your page numbers dropped in using InDesign's functionality, so they can stay consistent. And then everything else you can play around with, but your page will, as you're flicking through it, everything's not jumping around on me. It's sort of the headings always dropping back into place.
I'm going to follow the feedback you gave last week, I think, where you have 3 different page masters, and then you use that for your different things.
And they've got they speak to one another, but maybe they've got a bit of the difference in flair and stuff is good.
Yep.
And one of the best ways to do it is for my stuff, when we're putting together workshop documents, we'll do say activities have a certain heading style, and then slide pages specifically have a certain heading style, and so the participants in our workshops can orientate themselves around that visual alone. So for your 3 concept pages could have one style, research pages could have another, and then as I'm going through, the visuals provide a lot of information then, as well as being appealing, is another way to kind of embed information into visuals like that. Is really nice.
Cool.
And that can be done with colors as well. If you don't want to go so ridiculous to anybody, you can have one style, but then just vary your colors. For research is red, and designs are blue, sort of in your graphic.
Yep.
Are there questions around other aspects of the submission or project where you're up to? So we've talked about the DDR parts a fair bit now. Are there questions about the videos or the posters or the models that you're making?
The two posters. Why do we need two exactly again?
So the posters, I think it says you can have 2 to a maximum of 4 posters. Is that correct, Marianella? Yep. So the posters, when you submit it to Padlet, the clients might come along, they can look at a poster and quickly understand. It's like the posters that you see on level 4 D block. When we're actually there in person, you see posters pinned up all over the place. So your poster is an opportunity for you to share your entire project in a 2D printout version. So you're not always going to be there to present. You're not always going to have a computer that you're able to run a YouTube video on to present. A lot of times it'll just be a stick-up poster is all that people get to see. They'll walk around an exhibition, oh, this looks interesting. What can I find out about it? So it's a lot of that same content that you're putting in your client pitch. It's just in a poster format. So there'll be some hero images, there'll be some information about the users and the interaction, what the form model looks like, what sort of manufacturing processes you're doing, or some overall dimensions and orthographic views. So rather than trying to cram everything onto one single page, it's like, well, you've got up to 4 pages that you can put this information on. So maybe the first page is hero and context of the project. Second page is the usability, some storyboarding. Third page is your manufacturing sort of detailed images. That's what, so maybe you have 3 pages.
I think as well. Yeah, sorry, Marianella, you go.
No, I keep interrupting you. You're first.
That's fine. I was going to say as well, the reason, like, we're not always going to be presenting in Zoom sort of settings, and it's still good to go through the exercise of making those visual posters. They're super common at trade shows and conferences and stuff like that. You'll have just large-scale posters of information, and then you'll have, say, multiple panels because each one addresses a larger thing. Maybe that one's your hero, and then one goes into the detail of the system, and then one is maybe the back-end sort of stuff or manufacturing sort of thing. So that's still an exercise that it's important to go through regardless of how we're presenting now, because it's a skill you're going to need to have. So that's why you would have multiple, and that's why they would potentially each be addressing a different aspect. Even though potentially in this setting you could do a giant one, it's still good to see that that executed and that exercise done.
Mm-hmm. So what I would like to add is that every piece of presentation or every item of the presentation has a different purpose and a different functionality. It's impossible to show an interaction in a still image. And this is why we're asking you to do a video and showing how that works. You are not going to show the aesthetics properties of your design in the specification report, because that has to be a concise report that describes the dimensions, the materials, the standards, or everything that is explained in the handout. So it wouldn't go there. It may go on your client pitch if you are using a PowerPoint or you're using some images, you're sharing your screen to describe some parts. But once the pitch is gone, the oral presentation has passed, there's nothing that stands still and show your work. So the functionality of posters and visuals is because it's a standalone item that shows your work. So if every person is doing an interactive model, the other is doing the aesthetic model, the other is doing CAD, where are you going to show the usability? Where are you going to show the context? Where are you going to show all those other items of work, of your design thinking that were important to inform your product solution? So that's the place, where posters are the place where you present those things. So in the handout and in my explanation, the PowerPoint that I presented, there's a video for that, for the assessment items, it says digital presentation, and it says the posters explain the key aspects of your interaction design: hero image, storyboard of the interaction, action, reaction flow, detailed images of feedback, attention status. It should include models or images of all other models, for example, the aesthetic, CAD render, detail, or any other type of model that you have done. It's a minimum of 2 or maximum of 4 words that are required. It may be that if Queensland Museum likes the project, then we may be able to do an exhibition of this. So we would print out the presentation boards that you have done and send to the museum. That would be great. So
is that correct? A2 format?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So again, it's similar to what Rafael mentioned in his presentation today. Every item has a purpose. They're not repetitive. You're not repeating the information. You're showing different aspects of your design. So this is why these presentations are a good exercise for you to explore techniques, to push the boundaries of what you have done, to try new things, and to show as much as you can, what is it that you have resolved in what way, how much you have gone in depth to develop that solution, which should be the best in the world. And that's how you're going to come and present your design as the best thing ever. Okay, I hope I respond that question about what the visuals are and what needs to be included in that.
Marianella, sorry, I just had a quick question. I was not able to do it in a good way to judge, as you know, for the video, what sort of information you should have said, or how much or how little. For me, I consider they're important, but they might not be as important to put it on the posters. But do you think it would be a good idea to put just key points of really important key parts of the research that make a difference on their final design? For example, my observation says that kids don't interact with something in the lab, in the Spark lab, for over 2 minutes. So that was a key thing for the interaction to last no longer than 2 minutes. So should I put just key points that drove my design in the posters?
Yes, that's a good point. While the posters are not meant to be text heavy, keywords is fine. Especially, depending how you lay out, the poster, the image should be able to kind of flesh out that situation. So, for example, in a storyboard, you're presenting the storyboard of the interaction flow. You could have keywords under to show, these last 2 minutes because research says blah blah, for example.
Okay.
You wouldn't put that keyword in your hero image that shows the aesthetics. So there are places and areas in which you can add that.
Yes, would be more suitable. Okay, thank you.
Are there questions about the videos? Because there's 2 different videos, the client pitch and the Arduino model. Is anyone confused or lost about what to put in the different ones?
With the client pitch, Marianella, is that a requirement that every team member speaks in that pitch, that you want to hear from the whole group in that video?
Yes, if possible it is, because everybody had done a part of the work, especially with the modeling, which took different aspects in terms of modeling, and so we would like to hear that, and especially because we haven't been able to work face to face with any of you, it is a way to give everyone an opportunity to show their work. But having said that, Naomi, it doesn't mean that you have to split the 5 minutes in equal parts for each member. So it could be that there's one person narrating everything and giving, the moment to individuals to explain some aspect of that and then bring it back to the narrator.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so it is you guys have to design that pitch.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In the client pitch video, and this will flow through, and I missed some of Raf's specific talk today, but I've seen similar ones before, and I imagine he was talking about the flow and narrative of the story of what you're presenting as well throughout that. And so with this project, you've each had 4 different, so you've got 4 different models that you're doing. And so rather than doing a presentation where it's like, oh, I made the CAD model, and this is how I made the CAD model, and here's an exploded view of it, and all that sort of thing. That's not good information for a client to be receiving. What you want to be doing is, say, that person who did the CAD model, maybe their role in the presentation is talking about manufacturing. And so so Joe's going to talk about the manufacturing now. Okay, got a slide here. that uses the CAD model, uses an exploded view, but he's not talking about the CAD model itself. He's talking about the product, and we'll be using this material in this process, and it assembles in this way. And then, okay, and now we're moving on to the interaction. So, and Mary's going to talk about the interactions and the slides and the pictures that relate to the interactions, or maybe it's a small video taken from the tech task, but it uses the Arduino models when talking about the interactions. You're not talking about the Arduino model and I did this to make it. You're talking about the interactions that are achieved by using that model. So each of the 4 different models you're creating, they're useful in different ways for highlighting different parts of the project. So make sure that when you tell that story to us in the client pitch, you're making use of the models, but you're not telling us about the models, you're telling us about the product and using the models to tell that story.
Just one question in regards to that, Andrew. I'm the one designing the internal skeleton that will store the Arduino, you know.
Yep.
My teammate, Oscar, he's doing the CAD model. I'm giving to him the dimensions and the design and everything. I'm the one that knows the design decisions, how it's assembled, how it's done, the process. I know all of that. So, but he did the CAD model. So going back to what Marianella was saying, she wants to hear from everybody. He said, you don't want to hear about the CAD model. You want to hear about the manufacturing side. So what do I do in that instance? Because he only is doing the things on CAD, but he's my information in order to do that.
Yep. So I'd suggest that perhaps you're the better person to speak about manufacturing. Oscar will be able to provide the images that you need to be able to do that well. And so you need to talk to each other about, oh, we need an image that shows this so that I can talk about that. But yeah, it sounds like in your group, from a manufacturing perspective, you've got more of that knowledge and are probably better suited to talk about that. Maybe Oscar is better suited to talk about something else. So you don't just have to talk about, well, this was the model that I made, and so therefore I talk about this. You structure your presentation, and as Marianella said just before, maybe you've got someone who's doing the bulk of the presentation, and they just hand over to individuals just to talk about a little bit here and there, but it's mostly done by one person. So that's still a possible way to go.
Yeah, it is interesting, the example that you bring, Maria, because the design has to show contribution from everyone, and just doing the making or the drawing is not a design contribution, it's a making contribution. And so in the thinking process of the design, of the resolving the product design, this is the part that we want to see who did what, and that's why the DDR is going to show that, and this is why we want to hear from everyone as well.
I think you'll also find, particularly with CAD from a manufacturing perspective, you can, and it's really good to do lots of sketches and detailed sketches of exploded views and sections before you go to CAD to understand this is the principle of what I'm trying to do. What you will almost always find is when you actually go to the CAD and you create it, you'll discover, oh, my perspective sketch was a little bit off there and the physical space doesn't exist now that I've created the 3D model to fit that part in. And so we've got to make a change to the design, and we've got to open up a gap here to fit some wires through that I'd forgotten about in the sketches. And so the manufacturing side, there'll be details that come to light through the CAD process. And so if Oscar hasn't already discovered that, I'm sure he will very soon, is that there will be parts, even though you've come up with a lot of the manufacturing knowledge and information, there'll be parts of the CAD model that Oscar will see, and oh, we've got to change this because of this reason, we've got to change that because of that reason. And so there is still that level of working as a team in that.
Yeah. Tolerances, assembly, you know, all those decisions comes from working with the manufacturing details itself. So we're hoping that in this case, Oscar would know about that.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a little thing as well, in creating videos, something that I've noticed over the years in watching other people's and from seeing some of your guys in the last assessment and stuff. Music is, you have to be very careful with it. I think it can be extremely distracting. It feels like you just grab a song from YouTube and just slap it on, you know, it's kind of done. But it's just another thing for the mind to process, and it can sometimes just completely detract from what you're saying. And by the end of it, I don't have any memory of that. All I remember is the ting of the cowbell. So music can be used well. Just don't just slap it on there. If you're gonna put music into your thing, make sure it fits contextually. Make sure the song makes sense with your context. Otherwise, that can be jarring as well. Just because we all are so exposed to media, we know what to expect and what kind of doesn't sit well. Avoid anything too rhythmic as well, just because voice is cadence, and the way you deliver something, even in how I'm speaking now, there's a lot of consideration for the spreading of words, and cadence and rhythm can really throw that off. So yeah, very little thing, but if you want the video to be effective, really consider what else is being processed in that. You've got your visual going, you're speaking, suddenly there's music. That's a lot to deal with, and if they don't gel, it just won't work.
And Raf probably said it during his presentation, and we probably said it last week as well, but with your images, and if you're making a slideshow to help with your video presentation, then use full images. Like if that's, yeah, don't, I just need to be careful in what I say.
Yeah, very careful.
If you've got a product sitting over a background, don't use like these big, full, crazy, nice photos that draw the attention away from the product. But make your product image, your renders, those sorts of things, fill up the screen with it, rather than having like 4 little pictures posted on a slide. Because sometimes people will look at a slideshow or a video on their mobile phone, and suddenly that picture, which may be on your nice big external monitor at home, is this big. On a phone, it's this big, and you can't see it. So it's good to make use of big images, and it helps visually as well.
I think, and there is a balance with that, with how many images you embed in a page, and then how much you're trying to show. But yes, make sure that you can read what's the readability of an image is crucial over everything. I prefer more sort of more pages or whatever so that I can actually pull through everything than stacking everything into one.
And this is where a slideshow is very different to a poster. So a poster, you do have that layout of, okay, we've got a whole bunch of images and text and different things on the one page. So that's perfect for a poster, but you can't just scale a poster down onto a video because suddenly all that text is tiny and those pictures are tiny, and it doesn't help much. So it's kind of 2 different approaches. So just be aware of that when you work on your posters versus your video.
I think as well, Raf's very conscious of and is very good at in putting together his slides, and you notice this as you see a lot of his work. He'll go for large images, very little words, but they're really just to support what he's saying, so that the mind's not trying, and I'm pretty sure he made reference to this specifically, you're not trying to process what he's saying and trying to read the thing at the same time. It just becomes too much and you can't process either. So you can go, it's not beneficial to have lots of words on a slide, even if it's explaining something, because we're either going to try and read it or try and listen to you, so something gets lost either way.
Has anyone actually started on their posters or a slideshow to help with their video yet that you'd be happy to share with us?
Andrew, before you keep going, and maybe because I need to go back to the other Zoom room, I came from that meeting first. Just wanted to clarify in terms of the specification report, which I don't know if you touched on that earlier. We're not looking for a thesis, we're not looking for a thick document. If you do it correctly, it's going to very likely be a very thin, few pages report, because what we're looking for is a concise description of what the product is. So this is my product is named this. This is what it does. It has 2-3 parts. Part 1 has these components. Part 2 has this component. Each of the components, it has a name. It's made of this material with this standard. It has these dimensions. So it is really to the point, very specific. And one thing we don't want is fluff. We don't want a narrative about anything that is not specific of what the product is. This is why that report is called Product Design Specification Report. So just trying to make sure and reassure you that don't worry that you don't have many pages in that report.
You're not writing an essay.
It's not the intention. We know it has to be a very concise report.
Just on that note, and excuse me if this was already answered when you guys were talking about the DDRs. I had to step out earlier. How long are you hoping for the DDR to be? What kind of range?
It is in the, we have a guideline for DDR, Hannah, that I updated recently, and you will find it in the weekly things.
Okay. A lot of the things that have been kind of talked about by other groups and kind of the feedback that's been given doesn't necessarily apply to our group because our content is very similar to our first week's content. So I'm just worried that our DDR isn't going to be particularly large.
Look, I think I mentioned this before, but just again, we'll reiterate and reassure people. We gave a guideline in terms of a number of pages because it just to cater for different kind of learners. Some people really need that kind of guidelines. What we want to see is to understand the process that your product design went through, all that design decision process, what informed that. If you're going in depth and exploring each aspect and that's comprised in less pages, that's okay. We're not going to be worried about. It's more about making sure that it's not a one-off idea and everybody makes something out of, the first idea. So don't be too dissuaded about the number of pages. We give the number of pages because it's a helpful thing for some people and some teams, and it's also helpful for people not to go overboard or for people to do too little. But it's mainly if you have less pages than that, but have good quality content, it's not a problem.
It should show the decision-making process and the process you went through. So, okay, you haven't changed a lot from the tech task submission with yours, but you have explored a range of different things. So you've explored a lot of manufacturing details, you've looked at different materials, you've looked at some different technology that you're planning to embed in yours. You've looked at part of the broader system. And so what other ways can you implement this basic concept into some of the other sea creatures or displays that you're talking about putting into the space? So you're exploring all those different things. And we want to see that you're making decisions based on particular reasons through that, and you end up at your final solution. What we don't want to see in a DDR, and if that takes 10 pages or it takes 50 pages or 100 pages, it's showing that process has been logical and it's planned. It's not just, here's a picture of our tech task, and 2 pages later, here's a picture of our final design, and it's got all these different changes to it, but it's not documented, or it looks exactly the same. And as a group, for the last 6 or 8 weeks, you haven't actually done anything because it's just, well, here's our tech task again. There's going to be stuff you've been doing, things you've been researching, decisions you've been making, and that's what we want to see.
Cool, thank you.
Right, good. Andrew, James, and the teams, I'm going to the next room now. Is there any question for me at this time? No, I go. I'll come back later.
Yep.
Okay, bye.
See you later.
Bye.
So, yeah, has anyone started on their presentation work for posters or videos that you'd like to share, and we can sort of give some feedback or guidance on everyone might benefit from? or no one's quite up to that point yet.
I was going to say, even if you don't want to share it, please do share it.
Yes.
Then we can, it's like, if you don't like it, then we can just tell you what to fix, and then it'll be fixed, and then it's just done and you've progressed.
Mm.
We haven't got a video or those slides done yet. We've I think we've got the CAD model, and the I can if my team are happy, I can share our document so far. I'll just share screen. Wait a moment.
I think as well in these sessions, it's easier to talk around a thing somebody's done.
Sorry, I'll just share this screen.
While she's doing that, just the other comment on presentations would be to encourage all of your groups to rehearse those presentations, but also talk to some of the other groups in this unit and say, hey, can we meet up on Zoom and run through our presentation and get some feedback from you on what you think is missing and what doesn't make sense. And then you can present yours back to us and we'll do the same. The groups that do excellent presentations have typically practiced and they've presented it to other people before, like several times before they actually come to their final version. Because a lot of times you've got all the knowledge in your head and you're so close to the project that you don't realize you've left out some important steps that other people don't know because they're not part of the project team. And that's where present to someone, they'll say, oh, that bit doesn't make sense at all. Oh, that's because it's this. Okay, great. We need to put that in the presentation.
So this is Dina's done the CAD model. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, so she's done the CAD model of each of the components and send that through so I can start on the appearance model. And Henry's doing the Arduino interaction. Just so I think I've got some. I think I put up. Oh no. There's some views of the inside. I just have to find them in the. I don't think I've added them here yet. And then just the manufacturing process. Yeah, sorry, Dina, there's some images that she sent through that I haven't added yet that show sort of the inside and how she's been able to put this together. So this is the platform. Mm-hmm. So we've made it large enough for, so this is the storyboard mm-hmm. of the interaction that Dina's put together.
That's really nice. I would say just really quickly with your CAD model, make sure that your images are framed to fit the model in appropriately, cropping it off unnecessarily.
Okay, sure, okay.
Just as a little thing, not like a deal breaker or anything, but mm-hmm. just as like a good process and presentation. Mm-hmm. But that looks quite nice.
So these are... so Dina and Henry, feel free to jump in.
Yeah.
What, I guess, were there any issues that presented themselves in the creation of this?
Not real. I mean, I'm having a bit of trouble with like Arduino stuff, just getting it all working because it's a lot of different interactions, I guess, that kind of overlap and things like that. Like I think we've got around like 4. Okay. Like we have a proximity sensor for like people walking past to make it set off the ears and tail. Mm-hmm. We've got lights and we've got buttons with lights fitted into them. We've also got a buzzer.
Are you having trouble just having each of the interactions interchange with one another?
I've been fiddling around with that a lot lately, but I haven't gotten it fully working yet.
No, that's okay. Just because there's a couple of, depending on how you go with it, a couple of workarounds when you're trying to get multiple interactions to occur simultaneously. Just because the Arduino is a processor, so I mean it's running. Sorry, it's running like one string of code, and moving between can be difficult if you're not as familiar with them. A couple of smoke and mirrors ways, if you find yourself struggling towards the end and you aren't able to resolve it, is you can run them as 4 separate codes if the interactions don't need to interchange in visual. Like you can say film your 4 interactions and code, input the code that you need as you need it, just as a workaround. I mean, normally it'd be great to have it all integrated, but obviously with everything going on, it might be easier to separate them out. So if there's one interaction that happens this way and you can have that all play out, but now you want to move to interaction 2 and they're sort of isolated in some way, like it's logical to then cut to a new shot and then the interaction 2 is occurring. I think that's a fine workaround as long as it's still doing what you want. Rather than trying to integrate 4 interaction codes into the one, it could be a workaround if you're still having trouble.
Yeah, because I've found that it goes down the code like a list kind of thing.
Yeah.
So some of the reactions are just too slow sometimes. So yeah, I'll try that.
And if you're trying to make it react, I mean, really, you could say run stuff like interrupts into it, which should pull it into other parts of code. And there's ways around it, but rather than going down that rabbit hole, it might be easier just to chunk your codes out into however many you need. And then just film it and then just stitch it back together consistently, and then it'll appear the way you're wanting.
All right.
Because with the code, it's really about making you do what you want. I'm not too stressed about your ability to integrate it. That's not what this is about. Your ability to integrate those codes isn't the focus here.
All right.
So this document that we're looking at, this is your DDR, the team's full DDR, is it?
Yes, it's a shared document, very similar to what you've seen before. So I'm formatting it, but we just drop in whatever we've been working on. And we've got a messenger feed, so we just take up any images or photos of sketches and then, just pop that in so that way we can see what we're all working on.
Page 25 there.
25.
Okay, yep. So that's scanned in analog sketch. You just dropped into the PowerPoint. Yep.
And we just popped in, I've just cut and paste any of our discussions or notes, just rather than rewriting it, just snipped on our messenger feed as we kind of discuss different parts of it. So that I just realized there's a bit that I haven't put in. And then that way, I guess everything that's put in usually has our name on it for what we've done.
So you've got your names up the top.
Yes.
In there. So I mean, my initial concern just looking at all the thumbnails is there's a whole heap of typed text in here, and that's not normally what we would be looking for in a DDR. Yeah, those sorts of pages where it's scanned analog sketches. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that we would typically expect, and we're very happy to see is just handwritten notes and things. When it comes to the typed text and that sort of thing, so if you go to one of those other pages.
Yes, this is all the research. So just any feedback that we've gotten, like that, some of the stuff from your presentation and ID pilots, just the takeaways. Just because I don't think you'd be able to read my writing as I'm scribbling down the notes from,
But when it comes to whether or not we can read the writing is also not critical when it comes to DDR. We want to see that you're going through a process that's working for you. It is good to be able to see and understand, but the important thing is that you're able to see and understand that.
Sure.
And so what we don't want to be doing is giving you extra work, extra presentation work to make it look good and fully readable and laid out well and that sort of thing. That's not what we're wanting you to waste your time on, so to speak. We want you getting the ideas down quickly and move on. And so where it's appropriate, like with the research and typing out notes, absolutely do the typed text. But you're doing it well in terms of like the other analog sketches that are coming in. You're not trying to rewrite the text on those and turn it into a presentation. So that's good. Just don't overdo the typed text in your DDR because it doesn't have to look pretty.
Okay, no problems. No, that's good. Yeah. So I guess as long as we've got the titles and everything and you can see where we're going, you don't mind the, yeah, okay.
No, the whole thing is it's very rapid and fluid. You don't want to slow down the idea process because it's taking an extra 5 minutes to copy something out of an analog sketch and drop it in here, and it slows the process down. It's like, well, just go to the next analog page and take a couple of quick photos and drop them in later if you need to. But yeah, don't give yourself extra work.
No, that's great. Thank you.
But yeah, it's looking good otherwise.
Yeah, there's a bit that I haven't put in here yet. So we haven't done our video yet. So I think that's what we've got to do next is work out order and who's saying what. The
2D drawings that you've got there, like page 44 through 47.
Oh, yes.
Some of those ones, so that's good stuff to have in the spec report.
Okay.
So your spec report will be those specifications. So this part is this size, this dimension, this material. It's a bill of materials. It's so like is the project aim. So just a couple of those key things out of perhaps the design brief of this is the project. Not a lot of text in there, and then it moves on to here's the CAD files, here's the material choices and the processes and the bill of materials, and that's sort of the essential things for your spec reports.
Okay. So with the spec report, is that part of the design report? Is that, or does that fit the DDR? Yeah. Oh, that's in the design report.
That's the design. Yeah. So it's a design specification report.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yep. So it's the file that documents how it's actually made. Okay. We're not worried about the research. We're not worried about the concept development and all that sort of thing. Here's the final product. Here's what it's made from. Here's the dimensions for a couple of other small blocks of text. But this is the aim, or something. There should be a point-by-point breakdown, I think, in the handout. I'll just try to find it to make sure I'm not making things up.
Oh yes, I think Marianella had one in the. Oh, the outline for the final design report. Oh yes, design details and specifications. It's all detailed on. Yeah, I see that.
So I'll just.
It's page 5 in the PDF that we download.
I'll just share it so that others can see it, just to be sure.
I'll stop screen sharing.
So this one here, can you see that now?
Yeah.
Yep, cool. So yeah, so outline for the final design report, cover page, contents, intro. So this is your brief bit of text. We don't want big essays. It's just like a sentence, maximum paragraph of the description of the project, what your problem statement and context is. So it's largely pulled from your design briefs that you've already written. Hero image, the storyboard. So it's just those graphics, one-page graphic thing. Brief description of the design. So it does this very brief value proposition, project aims and objectives, all that straight out of your design brief, and should be very short. Your aim is basically just a one sentence. The objectives, short, concise, design details. And so this is where, so overall dimensions, materials, textures, weight. So it could be, this could take up a couple of pages and it's largely images with some dot points or that sort of level of detail. So the features and functions, it can do this basic interaction, kind of like it's a summarized version almost of your posters or your pitch presentation, because that's where most of that information happens, is in those other documents. This is like just a really summarized version of the overall product. Then the technical documentations, so your tech drawings, your orthographic views, dimensions, exploded view, and bill of materials. I have put up a couple of bill of materials templates that you can make use of as well. They should be, where did I put those, Stuart? I think they're in the Learning Resources tab. Or did I do that in manufacturing unit and not on here yet?
Yeah, they're actually in the manufacturing unit.
Okay, so
they're pretty easy to find. They're just straight in the Learning Resources folder, and yeah, you'll see it straight away. It's pretty accessible.
So currently in the other unit, what I'll do is I'll actually look to put a copy of them over in this unit's one as well, because not everybody does both units. So it will look something like this: bill of materials, example, BOM and BOM template. Make use of either or both, create your own version of the bill of materials that's appropriate to this project.
And a lot of the CAD software they use will be able to pump out a bill of materials if they're labeling everything correctly anyway.
Well, oftentimes the CAD software, like if you do an exploded view on a 2D drawing, you'll create a parts list, and so it'll have a number and the name and maybe the material, but that might be the extent of it. Whereas the bill of materials, we'd like to see a bit more information in that if we can. But those documents that I've got, they'll have a lot more columns in there than you actually need to try and detail for this. If it's not applicable, just leave the column out entirely. I guess the key things for this project would be detailing the material and the process, the color or the surface finish or texture that you've got on there. Anything else much jump to mind? So the name, part number should also relate to the drawing number. And then, yeah, so appendix to the report would be, yeah, copy of posters of PowerPoint, photographs of the models, links to your design videos. So they can all go as an appendix to the report. And that's why you kind of don't need to duplicate and copy the information that's in those other ones back into this. They serve different purposes. So this is more about the documentation of it. Any questions around that? Have I frozen?
No, that's great. That's great, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Everybody's frozen. It's it's 4:30, 3:30 on a Friday freeze. I'm just trying to think of what else would be good to discuss.
Does anyone have any of the models that they're working on that they'd like to show us and get some tips or suggestions on? Or,
Arduino as well.
Yeah, Arduino issues with what you're creating.
Sorry guys, we're encountering a few issues with Arduino. I'm not the one doing it. Johnny is, but I'm just a bit worried because of the issues that are happening. So one issue was that his Arduino board just burnt, like it stopped working.
Yeah.
So I really don't care. I could give him my entire Arduino package for him to use for the final, because to me it's about doing well for this subject. But the thing is, that's not the important thing. The important thing is to determine what the problem was that made that board to burn, because if we don't know that problem, that might occur again, and we're not having enough boards.
It'll be in, I can tell you right now, it's going to be in the wiring, and it's going to be Ben's special, which is probably running your live to ground without enough in between.
Hello, Will and I have dropped into these sessions for all done with our groups.
Oh.
I'll just chip in on this. Has he unplugged everything and tested the board?
Sorry, I'm gonna probably get him to jump in because I don't understand. Like, I don't know what he's doing. That's his CAD model. But the only thing I'm gonna say before I stop talking is he believes that maybe has to do with the coding, which I don't think it is, with the number of things he has, because we have several interactions, several inputs, approaching, touching, all these different things. But I doubt it's that.
That would be the last thing that I would think it is. I'll put it that way.
I would be amazed and honestly a little bit impressed
if he's done the memory, yeah.
If he's actually destroyed the board. So the first thing to do really is to unplug all the wires, plug it into the computer and see what's working. And the most likely scenario is that it's just shorted somewhere. It's just got a wire in the wrong place. The Arduino won't be destroyed. They just don't turn on when they're shorted out. As soon as you fix that short, they start working again. I can demonstrate that now if you like. I can set up my kit and show you what I mean.
Okay. Sorry, Johnny, are you there? Would you want to jump in and ask your questions? Because this is probably the best time to do it. It's the last part. I don't know if it has come.
We can wait.
You're muted at the moment, Johnny, if you're trying to speak.
No. These boards are very hard to kill.
Yeah. Do you want to quickly demonstrate what you're just talking about there, just in case anyone else comes across a similar problem, they can just see?
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess while Ben's setting that up, as a general with your Arduino, it's going to be a back and forth process between your code and the board's wiring. One of the most infuriating things is you think you've done the wiring correctly, you go in, you do all your coding, it's not working, so you assume it's the code, you fix your code, still not working, and then you realize you plugged into pin 12 instead of pin 13. I do it still. It's just that's the nature of it when you're dealing with that kind of thing. Definitely check the wiring again, and then check it a third time, and then really thoroughly check it a fourth time, because, yeah.
Always check the hardware first, because it's probably the problem.
It's usually the hardware, because especially the software does self-checks, and so if the code isn't functional, it will usually tell you that before you boot up, and it won't let you. So the chances that it's not the hardware are usually fairly low. Always check your hardware, and go back and do line checks, see where everything's plugged in.
If it is the code, if it is the memory, it's possible to fix. So it's the end of the world. If it's the board, I mean, it's also possible to fix. It just costs $10 to do. You buy another one.
And I mean, the team obviously has a number of boards anyway, and so potentially, yeah, just trade them around.
Okay. Can somebody just spotlight my video quickly?
Yeah. Yes.
Up. Oh, just my dirty desk. My Arduino board. So probably the most likely scenario is that you've got a short in one of your wiring. So somewhere you've connected 5 volts directly to ground. And what happens then is the board shuts down. So at the moment I've got single jump wire plugged into 5 volts. If I take the other end and I plug it into ground, the board turns off. And you'd assume it's dead. Nothing's happening. Nothing you do is working. Nothing's fixing it. You pull the wire out and starts working again. That's the most likely failure that you're going to get on these. It's really hard to destroy these unless you take this, connect it to 5 volts, and you start touching these individual pins on the side of the chip there. Then you can destroy something. So don't do that. But it's most likely that he's just got a short in the wiring somewhere. One of your components is hooked up incorrectly, or on your breadboard you've got somewhere 5 volts going through something straight to ground. That is the most likely.
I would say, from my perspective, that's the number one thing that's going to be happening. And then the coding is at the very bottom of your list. So in a fault checking scenario, go back, check your lines to see where everything's running and making sure it's not connecting like that 5 volt to ground, because immediately just won't work. And then if you've gone through to the point where it's completely impossible to be the board, and I mean like completely impossible because you'll overlook stuff very easily, especially if you don't think it's the board, and then you've done all that, then go look at the code. But yeah, if the code's loading in, chances are it's probably not the code. It should be at least running, even if it's not doing exactly what you're wanting, whereas the board not working at all, unless blue smoke came out of it, which is also pretty rare, especially on these newer ones. I think they're pretty good with pull-up resistors and stuff, and the cutouts. So it doesn't, the short doesn't destroy it.
The first thing to do, always, take a photo of all of your wiring so that you know where it was. Unplug it all. Plug the board into the computer and see if the lights turn on. At very minimal, you'll have the little power light on. And if that's happening, then it means that there's a problem with your wiring. And then you can plug it all back in based on the photo that you took. And you double check all of your lines, unplug things one at a time until the lights turn back on. And then you can, just a quick way to fault find.
You can try loading up like the default Arduino Blink code, because that is certified by them as correct. So put that on. If it blinks, it's working.
It's fine.
If you're still having difficulty with it as well, I'd definitely encourage you to make use of the drop-in sessions as soon as you can. So like the Monday drop-in session, drop in and Ben can help talk you through different parts of it. If you can take a photo, or you can share your screen and show the model, show the code, those sorts of things, that will help a lot with the Arduino.
I've put the information for my drop-in sessions up on Blackboard. You should have all gotten an email notification about that as well.
Cool. With the drop-ins, probably if it's Arduino issues, don't go to my drop-in session. I won't be able to help you much. Go talk to any of the other 3 guys. They'll help you a lot more with the Arduino. If it's other models, presentation stuff, by all means, come talk to me. But yeah, I won't be able to help much with the Arduinos.
If you are having Arduino sessions, for my benefit, first thing you should do is take a photo of your board so that I can see it, or have a webcam set up so I can see your board, and get a copy of your code ready to show me as well.
It's almost impossible to help somebody if you don't have those.
Yeah, we don't. The drop-in sessions are 2 hours, but I imagine I'm going to be inundated with students, and I don't want to be wasting time waiting for you guys to prepare things. So make sure you get your questions ready in advance, and make sure you've got photos of your board, photos of your, a screenshot of your code, or whatever else ready to go. Just for me, just for my benefit.
Yeah.
And then it's much easier to help fault test and sort of see what's going on. Does anybody else have Arduino issues or anything really that they need? Videos, how to put that together, the best thing to do that with, the easiest way to do that?
Sorry, another Arduino question. Some of my output pins are failing.
You can just be working along. I'm in
Ben. Oh wait, I'll mute him. Don't worry, I got it.
Here it is. Cool.
Some of my pins are failing, so I've lost pin 2, 6, and 10 now. Like, they're just unusable.
Failing?
Yeah. Any ideas on what's doing that?
That's weird. What are you running into them? What are you doing?
Okay, so I have these these LED buttons. So they got an LED built into them.
Yeah.
That's what I've been using in them. And yeah, that's...
So you've got, it's an LED switch. So when you hit the switch, it's pulling voltage to the LED, yes?
You can program them separately as well, so the button can activate other things other than the LED that's in it.
Are there any resistors involved in this setup? Or?
The next question.
No.
Okay, yeah. So the Arduino has inbuilt, I think, 5K pull-up resistors,
Okay.
But they're not enough, depending, like, just because it's an integrated LED switch is working, it may not be enough. You need to, and so you might have potentially fried those pins. So what you'll need to do is, before you progress with any more, always have a pull-up resistor attached to divert off some of that power. So normally if it's just a standard LED, you can kind of plug it in, but it's considered poor form. So LED.
Did the component come with any documentation as to how they suggest to wire it?
No, it just came in a little baggie with no documentation or anything.
I'll just quickly share my screen so you guys can see this. So that is standard wiring for an LED, and you just need to, for yours, figure out what line is running to the LED.
Okay.
And then divert off or put a resistor in the line with it.
Okay.
Before it runs into ground, just to reduce the power that's going through. I would recommend, I think 220R is pretty standard for an LED, which is a lot higher than what's inbuilt into the pull-up resistors. They're really like kind of more backup.
Okay.
So, but it's strange that they would drop out altogether.
That's the thing. They don't drop out altogether. It's just like super faulty and flickers and things like that. Like it'll just kind of turn on and off.
So you're plugging directly into the Arduino, or are you using a
no,
jumper cable?
I have it on the breadboard.
Okay.
Could be to do with how your lines are running breadboard. Probably not as likely. I'd say it depends maybe on the pins as well.
Okay.
So yeah, and because there's powered pins and non-powered pins, and it shouldn't really matter, but it depends on what else you're running in there and how much back it's feeding back. So say motors feed power back sometimes, which can cause stuttering if you don't have them set up with a in a transistor circuit properly, because the power creates a feedback. In a lot of my examples, I didn't go into that stuff because you guys didn't have transistors in your kit. But you might want to go for, it may not be a motor, it's just I know for DC motors that's a thing. So here we go. So this circuit's set up, and these are pretty easy to set up. You can just buy like a transistor and a diode from JCOM. What this does is it stops backflow of energy by using the diode, which is a one-way, and then using the transistor as a activation. And so it's just in a way of controlling feedback, which can then help stop. Sometimes if with sensors, especially like if you've got a resistance sensor, like a pressure sensor, it might be having like a lot of static in its feed. Like if you're looking at it on the plotter graph. And so what's actually happening is you've got a bit of signal noise, which usually motors are pretty bad culprits for. And you got a lot of the projects using servo motors, so they'll often feed back, or can feed back rather. That they won't necessarily, but depending on where you're running them and how you're running, how much voltage everything's running. So it can be noise from motors as well.
Okay. If the component came with any sort of like code number on it, though, I would definitely recommend Googling that, because there's usually a standard wiring for every type of component, or at least every reliable component will have released the wiring diagram for it. And that saves a lot of guesswork.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, look at the component that you have as the problem first, and then try and figure that out. Definitely if it's running LEDs, you need to put in a resistor into that circuit. And then if you're still having the issue, it's probably to do, well, the next thing I would think of is that there is some sort of noise in your circuit, and motors are a common culprit for that, especially with these projects, because it's a fairly common component that you guys are using. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. Definitely, yeah, give those steps a try.
All right, cool.
And if you're still having a problem, then obviously go to Ben's drop-in session as well. And I guess because of the way that this is being presented, just think about how you can sort of get the Arduino to do what you want as well. you can sort of, because it's a video, you can, I think I gave this advice before, smoke and mirrors a little bit of this stuff. I'm really not worried about the code as much as how you're explaining the interaction and demonstrating that and communicating that with the model. If you can get the code to show what you want without it necessarily behaving the way it should for a final thing, that can be a workaround, just for the sake of achieving the end result.
I mean, especially if this is just a button and LED, there's nothing to stop you just using a button and an LED and using the standard wiring for that.
The model though it's like you actually push down on the light, and that will damage LEDs, and it's just a bit finicky to try and work out how that would go together with the standard parts.
I mean, yeah, you can even go quite lo-fi with that and then cover it, taping an LED flat down onto the button. The LED is made of a hard plastic. It'll probably live just as long as the button, especially for the purposes of doing a short film for your final stuff. To like start in terms of trying to fix what you've got, and then as you go down, if you're still having these issues, then potentially transition to just trading it out. I know that's infuriating, especially if you've bought components specifically for the purpose. And to be honest, they should be fine. It's probably just going to be to do with, I would say it's the resistor firstly.
All right, yeah.
Then I would say do you have a motor in your circuit?
I have 2 servos.
Yeah.
But they're not attached to the same circuit, so...
But they're attached to the Arduino.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, so there's going to be potentially a bit of signal noise, especially with 2. So every time they're firing and activating, a little bit of their power is feeding back because you don't have the little gate system that's seen here in this diagram. So yeah, if you are having trouble with that, and in fact, I'll probably see if I can try and get this this for you and just send it through as a link, because it'll say what it's running in terms of 220 resistor and what kind of diode it's running and what transistor. They're really easy to set up though. You'll need one for each motor though, I believe. Transistors are like $1 and diodes are 30 cents. So
all right.
As an option. How do I get out of this? There we go. How do I escape? That's that one. And yeah, that's kind of a fairly standard way of wiring a DC motor. And it'll be a similar thing for the servo motor, although I should probably just double check that so that yeah, often they are done direct.
Sorry, I'm back. I didn't realize I hadn't muted myself.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I'll have a look for. Yeah, just around pins not working, but I think it might be a signal noise issue with the motors.
All right. Yeah.
I will look into the servos
that
as
is
well.
weird for an Arduino. Now that I think about it.
With motors.
With motors.
Yeah. It could be. I mean, the servos, they never seem to be hooked up with any of the bridging stuff that I see with DC motors.
No, you won't burn it with a servo.
Yeah, because I know DC's feedback, but the servos don't seem to have that same issue.
No.
But it is 2 servos, so.
Is it Maria's?
No.
Okay.
They've still got this one here. Oh no, no. Apparently the servos don't create the same kind of signal noise as a DC, and it's probably just the way in which they generate their force is different. Oh, sorry, the way they're using the current is slightly different to like a brush motor. Yeah. So.
One thing I found as well, with like the tech talks. So like I originally had a motor and then I thought it died. So I bought another one and then it worked like for like 2 minutes and then died again. So I feel like I'm definitely doing something to it. But like, you know how in your tech task you didn't wire like a specific power line to the motor specifically? You just ran it off the board. Like you didn't have to run like external power or anything. Do you ever have to do that with a motor?
Yes.
I saw videos online. People were like using like external power to run it.
Yes. definitely for DC motors specifically, the servo motors should be able to run with what's there provided internally by the board.
Yeah, I mean for DC.
But for a
Just a
DC motor, yeah.
You said your motors are dead. Have you tried just hooking your motor up to 5 volt and ground and seeing if it turns?
Yeah. So it doesn't like all it does is like makes this like buzzing noise like it's doing something, but then doesn't spin.
That when you plug it into 5 volt and ground, or when you plug it into?
I tried loads of different things and eventually just gave up.
Sounds like something shattered inside there, like the motor's still spinning, but it's not transferring it to the shaft.
I looked it up online and it said that
I had the same issue with mine, Roman. I just had to give it a bit of a spin to get going. I had that like right from the get-go with my motor.
Might have seized up. To answer your question of the power supply, though, because it may be, depending on how much you're running through, that these DC motors do need an external. This is maybe an overly way to visualize it, this one, because it's got a to be honest, no, this is a pretty good way of wiring it up. It's similar to what I showed before. It's using a transistor to regulate voltage flows and stuff, and then it's got the resistor to drop that down. So that's a good way to do it with a 9-volt battery.
These kits come with a transistor?
No. But J-Car stuff have transistors. We can go in the world again, can't we? That's a thing. We can live again.
It's not an easy task for somebody who doesn't know what to do with electronics.
No, but if you just go into J-Car and tell them, like, if I'll find a wiring diagram before I tell you to run off for anything, but it's like a standard. Tell you what?
22
and then just tell the J-Car guy and he'll tell you whether they've got it.
Speaking about the real world, we were thinking of having our like presentation in live. Like, are we allowed to have like we both meet up at like my house and then have like our presentation like over the same mic together? Or do we have to do it?
That's not breaking any of the social distancing stuff. So
it's all fine now. So
you're still supposed to keep your 1.5 meters.
Yeah, I don't go 1.5 meters.
Wide angle is your camera.
Yeah.
You're submitting videos for the client pitches though anyway. So if you're filming them together, it doesn't. How would we know?
Yeah, we're not the cops.
Yeah.
I could be, but
we'd have to tell you.
21.
Yeah, I'm talking more about like the actual like product showing where we get like have like like on our Zoom session. Like, are we allowed to just like meet up and then do it together? You know, or like the cops gonna turn off my house? Be like,
I will call them. No, I don't see that being an issue in that, even in us.
I mean, I'm back at work. As long as you sit a little bit away from each other, as long as you're not arms around each other and make it real.
Hug.
Yeah.
We pressed the button on the Arduino together.
I shook the client last week without even thinking about it. Just be part of it. That'll only be, I mean, the large contingent of your presentation is going to be taken up by the video, unless you're going to use that last 5 minutes to show off board, product, whatever else. My point is you can do it, but it's not strictly necessary.
Yep. Cool.
So that's the link, and then if you were to need to buy components, you'll need these two. To be honest, in a lot of these things, if you end up with a slightly different resistor, or transistor rather, it actually doesn't really matter often. If they're like, this one is basically the same, it should work. Same with the diode, to be honest. Really, they're not, in the circuits you guys are running, they're not doing all that much compared to what their intention is, say.
I've got a link to JCAR to the correct transistors, James. I'll just send that to you in chat because I'm connecting on my phone.
Oh, no, you're all good.
They're 40. So I'm breaking the bank.
Did you say they're $40?
40 cents.
40 cents. Okay, yeah. I was like, that's not right. JCAR using COVID as a cover to make money off their transistors. There we go. And the diode as well is pretty standard diode you can get. They should have them. And these will plug straight into your breadboards as well. Pretty easy to use.
Don't put them in the wrong way around.
No, the orientation of transistors matters, and the orientation of a diode matters. Same as the LED, because an LED is a diode.
And the motor, so check that
And the
too.
motor. Well, no, actually, the motor, if you reverse it, it just goes in the other direction normally.
Oh, does it? That's cute.
Transistors
Same
will
as,
burn.
what was that?
Transistors will burn.
Transistors will, yes. You'll pop them. But no, motors you can usually reverse. And even speakers and microphones, they can, if you reverse wire them, they work in opposite. Just as a tidbit.
Will, if your groups are jumping back into the main, nope, they're gone. Never mind.
I guess never mind. I'll send him a message.
Sorry, while we've got everyone here, what Will and I were doing in our room, because we've combined our two tutorial groups as well, and I haven't seen much of his group's work, and he hasn't seen much of mine. So what we were doing was letting each team do a bit of an elevator pitch, almost like a practice presentation to a tutor that hasn't seen their work yet, which I think is quite valuable practice for presentations. It's also quite valuable way to just practice getting your idea across very quickly and succinctly, so that when you're practicing when you're preparing your client pitch, you know some of the things that you need to do to get that idea across succinctly. So if you guys are interested in doing that today, either we can sort something out in this room, or James or Andrew, if people want to do that, they're more than welcome to jump into my Zoom room as well.
Out of curiosity, how long did you give each group to do the elevator pitch?
A minute and a half.
Yep. Do you still have these timers set up that you could run on your display?
I do, but I'll have to do it from my computer. I'm connected to my phone to your Zoom room at the moment, but there's in mind, so I can come back.
Yep. So yeah, can I get a quick bit of feedback from the students? Are you guys happy to do a 1 minute elevator pitch of your concepts at the moment? It doesn't have to be showing all the models or anything. It's just
just be talking. You can show me pages from your DDR if they're relevant, whatever it might be. Just with a tutor that hasn't seen your work, because if you can get the idea across to me, somebody who hasn't seen any of your stuff so far, then you'll be able to get the idea across to our client.
Yep.
I'll bounce back into your call, Ben, and then we can both give some feedback, perhaps.
Sorry, guys, are you guys talking about the 5 minutes client pitch? And
yeah, kind of like that. But all we're saying is, okay, if we give all of our 8 groups in here, or however many groups we've still got left in here, 1 minute each, and you get to show a picture or a page from your DDR or something, and just explain to the other tutors who they don't know what your project is. And so you have 1 minute to say, this is our project, we're doing a cuttlefish that has these sorts of interactions and it can do this. That's all. 1 minute.
Any good 5 minute presentation can be done in under a minute.
I agree with that.
Why, what, and how. All right, I'm going to...
I think it's a good exercise as well to be able to summarize it and be succinct enough to present it in 1 minute, because that means you're comfortable with the information. And then when you have the 5 minutes, it allows you to expand out. Yeah, it's and at different points, you're going to need to take the same idea, present it to different stakeholders, and they're going to give you 30 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute. Sometimes you're in an elevator with somebody literally.
Okay, here I am again with a countdown timer available. This is what we were using for the third year students this morning. This will count down 90 seconds.
Do you want to give the students like a couple minutes to organize their ideas? Maybe,
maybe 10 minutes. Put down dot points. Prepare a little pitch. whatever it might be.
And then we can go.
You guys all know your designs. You've been working on them for weeks now. Just think about how you can talk about them and how you can present them to me, somebody who
the feedback
doesn't know your designs.
Will. Going to be just questions and stuff that you'll need to answer anyway. That'll help you along.
Well, that's not what you need.
Do you want to use breakout rooms and put people in the rooms?
Can
you guys be sit around?
No, it'll be very.
How they're going to
We'll just have anyone share their screen, show whatever content they've got, and just do everybody in the same room.
Yeah, that way others can see. Oh, okay, that's a good way of explaining or that sort of thing as well.
Yeah,
and maybe sort of help people resolve their stuff too.
We can just do presentation tips along with general concept stuff.
Never underestimate the value of a practice pitch.
Oh, you're telling me. 1 minute pitch sounds easy until you start talking.
Yeah, and then you realize you haven't said anything and it's done.
In a minute. Okay. If you guys want to spend the next 10, 15 minutes preparing anything, and then we'll kick off.
Sounds like a good idea.
I'm excited. I know what my groups have done. I don't know what anybody else's groups have done. Sorry, I didn't mean to click that, Andrew.
I know what my groups have done, but I don't know what James's are doing either. So we'll be good.
Good. All of my groups are gone for the day, so you can't see any of their work.
I think a good modern day elevator pitch scenario is more like the coffee line. You've got no visuals to rely on, but you might be standing next to someone who you'd like to work with in the future. Maybe they've got an interest that aligns with yours and you want to get across something before they order their flat white. You know, there's 3 people in front of you in line. It's a busy restaurant. How are you going to get there, you know?
And you will get jobs like that, funnily enough. You'll be...
like the coffee line idea, yeah. What people is thinking, I have a request and I hope somebody takes it. Can anyone, somebody please start like our own playlist of music? Spotify playlist?
Elevator music.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I can find good elevator music.
Yeah, awesome. And then we can use just have a playlist to work with this week. The ID3 playlist. Otherwise, I will just start sharing my 80s music. I don't think people will like.
No, that's back in style now.
Yeah, it's become popular again. Oh no, we can go to some. I got it.
Oh, look, I love a bit of synth wave.
Ooh.
You and I, we're on the same, we're going to the wave.
Lo-fi hip-hop to chill / elevator pitch to it.
Oh, what about this one? This one looks, I love you guys will get to hear it in a sec.
Okay.
I just need to get through the ad about finishing my tracks with this new sweet app. I feel this has a building quality that I really want to share with everybody. Yeah, okay. This is preparation. This is montage music. How do I share sound?
Do you have to share your screen?
Yeah, maybe. And when you share the screen, there's an option.
Here we go.
Oh, this is good.
Prepare.
It works, yay.
Thank you.
I feel like this is the music from Stranger Things.
It's just that
Not like that.
tone. It's that synth tone, yeah. And those like swells.
Oh my God.
Sequences, man. So good.
There's a little bit of Top Gun in there.
Oh yeah, I can feel that. Yeah, that dude. So good.
Start your weekend right.
This is Endless, a synthwave and retro electric mix with a sweet 80s, what is that, like Lamborghini or something in front.
Thank you, James.
Pink and blue.
I needed this in my life. Appreciate it. There we go. I'm going to keep procrastinating by just shifting my head around. But...
If the uni ever shuts down, James, you and me, radio DJs.
Oh, yeah.
You're enjoying too much, James. I can see that.
I can work to this.
It's a really good time.
It only took 12 weeks of online classes.
To get to this point where we're listening to the synthwave. I also like Breath of the Wild
We
Way.
should share the link to this video.
The Wild Way.
Yeah, we're going to that next. Don't you worry.
Oh, please do.
Let's get there.
I'm still back on Simpsons Wave.
Oh no, we're gonna get some Zelda Wave. Here we go.
Trouble keeping track of your team's work?
No.
You need a capture.
Oh, we're sponsored now.
Someone's not paying for Spotify. And it
This is
shows.
YouTube. This is YouTube.
I think I've still got my student Spotify discount, so...
I went with
Limited
Ocarina of Time Wave instead for more nostalgia.
The inspiration for the Minecraft music.
Oh.
I decided I'm going to go back and play Majora's Mask. I'm very keen. Such a good game.
I was distracting everybody from writing their pitches.
Hey, I don't think I've ever worked in a workplace where I get... What was that, sorry?
I was about to say we're more focused on the music than the pitch.
Yeah, might want to ease back on the music a bit.
There we go. Just soft, just soft.
That's good, that's good.
We're into
This
the
is what
final
you see while you're pitching.
Oh, I only shared that sweet last synth track with Ben. Don't worry, guys. I'll get it to you.
Thank you, James.
Nope. Legend, James. Thank you. No one in the office is going to enjoy that, but me.
I used to really have a thing against sequences and synth sounds, and then I woke up to the truth that synth and sequences are amazing.
It was the Initial D soundtrack that did it for me.
Initial D was a great show. I watched it recently, and it made me realize how much it's just the same thing but with different backgrounds, and like they reused some footage hard in that show.
Of course.
But it was worth it.
Should we get going with some groups now that your timer has run out, Ben?
Yes.
But one thing I was just thinking, a commonplace you'll come across doing short 1-minute pitches in the near future is likely to be if you go to any of the startup weekends and you get to, like, they open up the floor for people to pitch an idea or a concept, and then they build a team around that. And they go for like 1-minute pitches. Here's my idea. And so that's the sort of thing that you'll encounter a lot in the years ahead. So does anyone have a 1-minute pitch ready to share? To
90 seconds.
90 seconds even. It's a long elevator ride.
It's a luxurious elevator ride.
It is.
Do we have any volunteers?
The
Come on.
child walks past, they see, like, you know, give it some more life as well when presenting, I think.
Yeah, I want to...
Whatever you want. If you want to share your screen and actually show some visuals, please do.
Oh, sorry, I just opened Zoom. I was talking to my group.
That's all good.
Because you know when you're talking to on Zoom and your group is like the two voices like, oh god.
Hey, I'll give it a crack.
Cool.
Go on.
I'll give it a crack. I'll share my screen.
Yep. Yeah, please.
Yep. Please.
Pin my video if you need to, if you want to see the timer. You don't have to see the timer. It's up to you.
No, that's cool. I'm just going to share a folder with some visuals in it.
Yeah,
see
great.
that one?
Yep.
Our idea is essentially an anglerfish interaction that when the small prey fish approaches the anglerfish jaw starts chomping, and the light gets a little brighter, and like it would in real life. What the idea behind our one is, all as an interactive model. Small fish and the large fish are actually attached to these to pole.
Can you open up one of those images of the pole? Sorry.
What was that?
Can you open up one of those images with the pole so we can see that a little better?
Open up, yeah, sure. I can't see that.
Yeah, like 2 to the right actually would be great.
Which one?
2 to the right of where you are.
Hang on, you're only seeing the folder.
Yes. Yeah, we still see the folder.
Oh, yep.
So you can only see the folder.
We'll add like 30 seconds on for technical
difficulties. But this is a good example of the technical difficulties that can arise.
Yeah, if that happens in a real presentation, you just keep talking.
That's fine. Yeah, I'll just share my actual screen. I just want to share my actual screen.
Nice. Yep.
How are we going now?
Yeah, that's way better. Thank you for that.
They giving the actual images. So that's
yes.
showing the anglerfish and the little prey fish. That's a little bit of a process of putting the fish actually sit on those poles. Yeah, they sort of just stage. This one just sort of gives them a bit of a limited range to move around. The larger fish sits at one end. Here we've got some room for Arduinos and things to go in underneath. What it's going to actually look like. And there we have the full fish holes around this track here. As he approaches the larger fish starts chomping, and the light sort of glows like it would in real life. And the smaller fish would actually start vibrating like it's afraid to approach the bigger fish. So
that's 2 minutes. So I'm not going to stop you. You can keep going. But just a point that I want to make. What I wanted to hear, and what our clients are going to want to hear as well, is first of all, what are you trying to do? So instead of diving straight into this is the model of the anglerfish and it lights up when kids approach, you want to be talking about, okay, so the aim of our interactive display is to teach kids about blah, 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 or whatever it might be. You want to dive into that side of things first, that contextual side of things. So we've developed a display that's going to be set up in the Queensland Museum in their sea life exhibit. It's going to be an interactive display that we've designed in order to teach kids about the life of anglerfish. And then you start talking about how your model achieves that particular goal.
I'd also say to maybe avoid the background of the behind the scenes, how it's constructed. Here's where an Arduino would fit, because you were getting to the point that was actually very interesting, which is how the interaction plays out. I think the keys are what you're learning, why they should care, and then how it actually works, whereas how it's constructed is secondary.
Yeah, that would be put that towards the end if you have time.
I mean, this is useful for me to know as one of the teaching team, but it's also useful for me to get that kind of client pitch. What are you doing? Because until you fill in a bit more of that information, I still don't know what the purpose of your display is yet.
Okay, sure. Well, the purpose is to teach kids that anglerfish eat little fish and they glow.
Okay. All right. Easy.
No, but I think that's a good comment. I think when we've been working on a project for a while, the why that seems so obvious that we forget to communicate that to others. I do it all of the time. So yeah, it's a good point to think about. Like, start with your context. You're framing the scene. Why did we do this? So what was the point? Why did we do this? And then when you show the thing, I'm like, yes, of course you would do this because of your why statement.
Yeah. It's think about it like who, clients, what, who is your clients, why, what, and how.
Cool.
All right.
That's nice. I really like, this is nice. So like as an interactive piece, it makes sense within, say, the context of a museum where you've got this hard structured thing where they can't be like removed and stuff, so it avoids damage. So it's good consideration for, say, stuff like that, just as like a sandwich of critique with a bit of positive as well. Yeah, no, it's looks like it's coming along nicely.
Yeah, those actually aren't our real fish either. They're just sort of
stand-ins
fill-in model fish.
Placeholder anglerfish. Yep.
Yeah, that's all good.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Stuart.
Good job.
Who wants to go next?
I'm happy to go next just because these presentations get me nervous, so I'd rather get it out of the way.
That's why you practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but like 2 minutes to practice, Ben. Come on, we were just okay.
Yep. It's just get the idea across. You know the design. You know what you're talking about.
I do. Okay.
All right, fire away.
I don't know if this is gonna take me a minute. Sorry, no, hold on, wait up.
Time started.
Just go. It's informal. Go.
If you want to share your screen and show us some visuals, I can wait.
Hey, geez, hold on. Because I have like my script next to it, so I haven't memorized it just yet.
You don't have to memorize the script yet.
In real life, you don't memorize these things. You just have to be able to hit your main points and fill in the words as they fall.
And in fact, I mean, I don't tend to memorize a script. I never do. No. I figure out what I'm trying to talk about. I talk to a bunch of people about it in the week leading up, just like anybody who will withstand me being annoying enough to talk about it. And then you figure out what you need to say and when. And if they're good friends, they'll ask you follow-up questions and be like, I didn't understand X.
It depends on the presentation, really.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to rehearse and
That's
have the
true,
script.
Like when you get to the best level of presenting, you're watching the people's faces for moments where they don't understand or they don't care, and then you're skipping that topic and going on to something else. So you're clarifying what they want to hear about.
Guys, I'm ready when you are.
Cool.
Go on.
Okay. My group and I have designed an interactive cuttlefish product to be used in the museum for kids to 6-9 years of age. The aim of our product is to teach them about the cuttlefish, its appearance, and facts about its behavior.
Great.
The interaction involves approaching the hand to get an appearing green light, and then the second one will be touching any part of the creature to get a green stable light and a moving up and down fin. The third interaction will be pressing the creature on its back, slightly pressing to get a flashing red light, and the fourth interaction will be pressing harder to get a flashing red light, plus a moving tentacle and buzzing. The materials used are a soft material for the fins and for the tentacles, a bit harder material for the rest of the body, for the front where the eyes are and the back, and a much stronger material way to hold the internals, which is this orange part. The manufacturing processes used for the different parts are a 3D printing for the back and for the front, CNC machining for the internal to store the Arduino, and we need to make that part the strongest. Hence, we use a CNC machine. And
90 seconds.
That's 90 seconds.
Casting for the tentacles, for the fin.
Okay, cool. Nice. Good work. Great introduction. Good way of framing it.
First 20 seconds were solid.
Perfect. Your first bit was perfect. This is who we're doing it for. This is the age range of kids that we're doing it for. Can you just share your screen again for me?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. The next bit, though, this bit, I think you need to be talking about it in the context of the interaction. So rather than saying we press a thing and we get a green light, you need to talk about what the kids are actually doing and what they're learning. So when children press the cuttlefish, or when they approach the cuttlefish in a friendly manner, the cuttlefish lights up green to indicate that it's still happy and it's still happy to be approached. So we need to talk about it in terms of like that. But when kids press the cuttlefish too hard or they mess with it too hard, that's when it starts to get angry. And we indicate that it's angry by making its body flash red, and then maybe talk about the fact that cuttlefish use camouflage in their environment to ward off predators, and they use their skin to change colors. That's what you're simulating. So when you're talking about it in terms of your client pitch, talk about it like that rather than in terms of the technology. So rather than saying, we press it and red lights flash, it's more, when you mess with the cuttlefish in a way that it doesn't like, it changes the color of its skin to ward you off. It sees you as a threat. It sees the child as a threat. And we've done this with LEDs throughout the model that flash red to indicate this. So it's really just talking about it contextually.
Yeah. And in terms of that experience sort of thing, rather than necessarily those functional pieces, that it's within that narrative of the experience. There's nothing wrong with it then potentially going in depth for certain aspects, technical details, but it should be presented first as that narrative.
Apart from that, you ordered your information really well, and that you had the most important stuff up front, and then when we were getting into like how it's constructed and all that, that wasn't necessarily needed to sell me, which is great because it was at the end.
Yes.
Can I jump in? So yes, I agree with everything, and I think this is a really good example of a part in terms of describing the step-by-step interaction, which can go to in the last 5 minutes. So in the client pitch, yes, top level, describe the experience in the context of the museum. It's exactly what Ben and James, Will and Andrew are advising at the moment. It's about that experience, what will happen with people coming in the close to the display, to the interaction, and what would children would learn. The specific details, as you have given them correctly today, could go as a fleshing it out more in the last 5 minutes. You remember, Maria, that we talked about the 3 parts, the pitch, which is the big concept, and then the interactive interaction model. Maybe this is part of the explanation, and then at the end, you can have a storyboard about these action reactions. So maybe this is the kind of detail that goes later.
Sorry, Marianella, I got confused. So what you're saying again, that it's the order of the things that I need to say. All of those things were my part. The manufacturing process, which I thought we need to mention briefly. So I'm the one that needs to talk about it because it's mine. And then the feedback, attention, and status, and these other things. So you're saying that should I not talk about one of those things? Or
the first 5 minutes need to give the audience an idea of the product. So what is the product, what it does, where is it going to be, how does it work? In this case, the product is a display, it's an interactive display for the museum that the purpose is to teach children something about sea life.
Yeah.
And so this is why the tutors the different advice was about that experience. So what is your design? What kind of experience is the design allowing or affording the children? Is to learn about something in this way, because the main concept is that this thing happens when people touch the sea life. So this is why we have this display. But you can see that the time really went really fast for 1 minute. So we can't, that initial pitch can't go into too much detail.
Yeah.
But everything that you said is perfect, except that it should go after. Sorry about my dog. I'm shutting up.
So the 5-minute client pitch video, a lot of that video, that 5 minutes, should be about the experience.
Okay.
And not very much of it should be about the manufacturing detail.
Almost all of it should be the experience in the interaction, I think.
So things like the specification report, that's the perfect place to put lots of information about the manufacturing. You can touch on it in the client pitch because they kind of need to know that it can be made, but they don't need to know all the details.
Okay.
That can go more into the spec report.
It's kind of as if you're pitching to a manager. You don't need to tell them all the details that their employees might need to know down the line. You can say, we've thought about this. and you can hand this report off to someone who'll do that work for you. But here's the main idea that you need to be around.
Yeah. And the idea for the pitch is about the experience and the interaction. Me now, it's good for me to know this detail about how it works, and that's partly why I want to do these things now, so that I can see exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it. But the client pitch is more about the experience. So I guess you've just got to think about it like this. In the real world, cuttlefish aren't full of LEDs. So when you're talking about it in terms of that client pitch and that experience, you're not necessarily talking about it in terms of green light, red light. You're talking about it in terms of how the body of a cuttlefish works. And then you'll say, we simulate that by blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that they understand the idea and they understand how you're taking the concept of a cuttlefish and what they're actually going to receive and see at the museum at the end of the day. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So focus from the kids or the interaction.
That's right. For the client pitch. Yeah. Yeah. And then your last, because we got 15 minutes to present. So you got client pitch, you got tech task video, and then there's another 5 minutes. In that space, you can fill out for the teaching team more detail about manufacturing, how it all goes together, what specific tech you use. That's the space that you can do more of that information.
I guess that could also be in the posters anyways. For example,
absolutely.
CNC machine and what parts are 3D printed. So I may not need to say which parts are, but I can just indicate it with a couple of words and, in the image.
That's right. Yes, and you can have those images and that stuff ready so that if the tutoring team asks you questions, or if the clients, how is this made? How are you planning for this to go together? You have the information ready to go. And I can see it. You do have it ready to go.
I think as well, just as like a comment on these, as opposed to say maybe a longer presentation.
I hope everyone's taking note of this too.
Yes, yeah. I've done it up as 2 really quick prompts. So in a 5 minute, you've like the amount of time that you can spend on say manufacturing is a lot larger, and so you can go into more detail. As you compress the time, then you front load it a lot, and it becomes you're winning them over with what the experience could be, and you're trying to get them interested, and then that can lead to follow up conversations, or they can then take your materials that you've provided that give more of that background detail. So this is just another good exercise in learning how to present within different time frames and how to structure it for different time frames.
Yep. All right.
Any other groups? Can I go now? Is that all right?
Yeah,
please.
Cool.
I know a minute and a half is quick, but I want to hear that kind of the first bit of that front level stuff.
Right. Alrighty. Am I good to go?
Yep.
Cool. Thank you, Ben and Will, for giving us your time so that we can present this. We have developed an interactive display to help educators stimulate discussion around sea life and ecosystems. This will be set up and displayed in the museum in Queensland. The child is walking through a museum. The display lights up. It grabs his attention and he goes over and touches it. It's made out of soft silicon and he sees that it can be moved up. As he moves it up, the lights in the jellyfish, this part right here, go from being happy and blue and green to a soft glowing red. The further he moves it up the board, the brighter the red gets. Then there's an intermittent buzzing. The further he goes up. If he lifts it out of the water, the buzzing goes to a full flatline sound, and the lights all go out if it's lifted out of the water. This display we've developed so that it can be set up as a multitude of displays as seen here, and this can give you an idea of the scale as well. The display can be used in a vertical or a horizontal position and can be developed further to work with different types of displays depending on what's being shown at the museum, such as the NASA exhibit or the spider exhibit that they've had recently. Thank you.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah.
Very, very similar to Maria's. First and last bit, perfect.
Excellent.
Great introduction. Great follow up with how this can be applied to a lot of different displays as well. I think that's a really good idea.
The end hook was great.
That's
showing
gonna
the
sell it
diversity
really
of the
well.
idea. Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah.
The bit in the middle where you're talking about how the product's used, again, just make sure you're talking about it in the context of the actual interaction. So why is the light going red as you lift the jellyfish out of the water? You didn't explain that. You just said as you move it further up, it gets redder and redder and redder, right?
Yep,
Real jellyfish
absolutely.
aren't full of red lights. So you're talking about it instead, you want to talk about it in terms of what the experience and the interaction is. So you're trying to teach kids about the depths that jellyfish can safely live at, right? And as we go further up this board and it shows different water depths, it's getting unhappier and unhappier and unhappier. And if you take a jellyfish out of the water, then it dies.
And we see this through these outputs, but that's the end of the sentence.
Yep.
We focus on the context first.
Yeah, and then this is demonstrated by, you can see this within, we've used LEDs to demonstrate, X, to tie back into what you've got in the text. But I
Because
think
essentially that's the easiest part for you to swap out. Like if they go at the end of the day, we don't want things that light up, but we would love it if you did that with sound. Right. If you've already explained the context. If all you explained was the LED stuff, all they've got to go on is LEDs. And if they don't want lights, your concept's gone.
I think Will's actually raised a really good point there of that the LEDs aren't the experience. What you're selling is this whole concept experience. And in a lot of ways, and I've said this throughout the semester, some parts can be chopped and changed. I said to Roman in his group that potentially theirs could be any sort of animal. It just, some will be even more appropriate for the experience and context, but the core concept exists kind of outside of that, and that's what you're explaining, and then you tie it back to the tech and everything else almost at the end of that.
Yeah, you did that really well towards the end when you said this doesn't have to be a jellyfish, this doesn't have to be sea life. You're like, that's perfect. That shows me that it can be expanded. It can be whatever I need it to be.
One thing that I would like to take opportunity now is to clarify the concept of experience, because I think it's from the conversation I can pick there that it is not quite clear. When we talk about experience in design, we're talking about the experience of the user. So it's from the user's perspective, from the user's eyes, what is the user doing and what is the user sensing and what is the user expectations. So when we talk about that narrative, that story that you did really well, but at some point you shift to the object, it's more about when the child is touching it or holding it, he or she will look and will see that when the farther they go, it takes the sea life from the habitat to the level, then the child will see. So it's from the end user perspective. That distinction of experience, describing experience or describing how something works. And I think that it's interesting that we take for granted that people would understand the word experience. In design, it is very specific. It's always user-centered. So when you guys describe your experiences, make sure it's from the user's perspective, and that will clarify if, in terms of what you need to pitch at this higher level of the presentation or description of your design.
A very minor point.
Sorry.
A very minor point, but something to be wary of in your presentations. At some point during that experience, it became a little boy specifically. He does this, he does this.
I had a note on my page not to do that. Stressing a minute, trying to get it in under that 90 seconds.
Try for they as well, because that would be especially 100%. Like if you're presenting, I think to both women as well. So just for instance, if they or is a better.
The user is another way. We had a lot of discussions about this with the third years because they had the third years were presenting their clients were Spinal Life Australia, so people with spinal injuries and people in wheelchairs. So we had a long chat with them about the kind of language that you use to make it accessible for your users and for your clients. It's really just about knowing who they are. So just practice that language.
It can be simple rhetoric, like the difference between disabled people and people with disabilities. One puts the people first.
We found that a lot of the third years just said people who use wheelchairs, right? It makes sense. It's very clear rather than.
And it doesn't state a condition of them. It just acknowledges.
This is a very different situation, but just it's just a point.
So just to address the feedback, the bulk of what you were saying about the experience based of this, if I were to put a sentence to the effect of the child sees that the jellyfish does not like being removed from its environment, would that, kind of go towards what you were saying there?
It's more your whole interaction is about simulating the fact that jellyfish don't like being taken out of the water, right? So it's more, okay, so we set up this first display to demonstrate to children what happens when jellyfish are removed from the water, or to demonstrate that jellyfish are unhappy at different depths and don't like being taken out of the water. We've demonstrated that with some very clear color outputs from our display board. So most kids know that a red light is the light for stop or for bad. So as we lift the jellyfish out of the water, as it gets unhappier and unhappier and unsafer, as we lift it up, it starts to glow red to indicate to the children that it's not happy and that it wants to be returned back down to a suitable depth. And when you take it out, it flatlines.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not simply enough to mention the context beforehand and then bounce back to using those input-output words. You should be keeping that context with you the entire way through your description of the interaction, and only sometimes referring to what the actual outputs are.
That's right.
Then you tie it back into, and then we have done this using this. But so you're explaining on this sort of level, and then you might dive into what's behind. But I think Marianella made the point of it's from the user perspective. So for instance, if depending on what your experience is, it might be the child enters the space and they see, and what draws them to that object, and they see this, and as they approach, X happens. And I think that this comes back to storyboarding, where we're talking about, like, draw up your storyboard and try and, as you're doing that, eyes closed, however you do it, imagine what those steps and stages are and experience and visual and sensory experiences for the child in that space. And then as you get through, and then you get to the point where it's like, and it does this and behaves in a certain way, and then you can be like, and it does that with this, and then you keep going with, and then on the experiential level, an X and Y is happening, and that's being done with this. So those sort of brief cuts into the deep dive.
With your storyboards, it's a very good point, is that they should focus on the user as well. Don't do a storyboard where it's just focusing on the product and showing that it changes from red to green to having a sound. Focus
That's
on
a systems map
what's happening.
As well.
And so your storyboard is an image of the child touching the jellyfish or the cuttlefish, whatever it is, and then it reacts in some way, and then the child does something else with it and it reacts in a different way, but the child is the focus of the storyboard. Like the child should be in pretty much all the storyboards.
I think where design is, at least the design that we practice at QUT, is user-centered design and user-focused, and so the user is the primary thing. It's like you're trying to educate the user about this through this experience with the user. Like, don't make the object like relate at all, I guess, to the user and their experience and how they see it. It's about to say don't make the object the hero, but then
from a child's perspective, they're interacting with a jellyfish and it's unhappy. They're not interacting with silicon or LEDs or a buzzer.
That's right. That's right.
And you want to sell it as that. Yeah.
We've got 15 minutes. So keep going through groups that want to do some more.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone's taking on board everybody else's feedback.
Before we proceed, I think it's important to make this distinction. Why I see that we stress this thing about the experience, and it's because designers, we design for people, and the objects, the products, the system, the services that we design are mediators to make things better for people. Any effort in our design work is about making things better for the future, for people to do better things every time. So the person, the user, is always at the center of the work. And yes, the focus of your attention in designing a better processes and materials and dimensions and working with the product is because through that, we make things better for the user. So when we talk about experience, it's always about around the user. That's why we call it user-centered design.
You can see that.
So it's not just regarding the product in any sense, but it is just to make a distinction. When we talk, is otherwise we're designing gadgets. The gadget could be perfect decision in terms of dimensions and materials and things, but it may not serve a good purpose at the end. It may not be long lasting. It may not be sustainable. It may not really add anything of value to the life of people. So this is why we have this distinction. We design to with products as mediators to make things better for people, to create those experiences. Okay, so just wanted to say that.
Also, just a really quick feedback before another student comes in. Matthew, and the team, generally speaking, the design is quite nice, and the way you explained it was really good. I loved showing that expansion of all these other things that it could be. And then even that top view of the turtle was really nice, because I was like, oh yeah, you could imagine helping it into the ocean and all these sort of things.
That last slide sold it for sure.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I can imagine this being a bunch of different things that are very simple displays, but that operate on similar principles, but then can be used to do different things, which is actually really great.
That's the type of thing where if you see the guy grabbing his coffee, you show him that before he leaves. Like you cut whatever you're talking about and be like, oh, and by the way, this. You know?
This is what it could be. This is the vision.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Who's up next?
All right. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
90 seconds plus 20 minutes of feedback.
I like to think that the feedback is going to be generally be able to be applied.
We can hope.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I mean, every subsequent pitch so far has taken on feedback from the last one. So
yeah, that's actually.
So who is going next?
I'm going next.
Okay.
Share. That's all sharing, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Far away.
All right. So basically, we're building a sea bunny, which is a type of nudibranch. This would be an exhibit that would sit in the center of a room, and through the interactions a kid can make with it, it kind of teaches them about the nudibranch's or the sea bunny's senses. So it has rhinophores on top, which are also its gills, and it kind of uses those to find mates and just navigate, find food, things like that. So we've made it so that the sea bunny acknowledges children who approach it or become near it, get near it by making it display a kind of positive noise and moving its ears. It's also got more examples of its senses around its body that the children can interact with in the form of kind of small interactables around its body that are constantly lit up. And when children interact with them, so if one press is pressed, then that one will light up. And if multiple children are interacting with it at once, it will begin flashing, kind of make it more interesting. Oh, as it,
and that's time.
Yeah.
That's time.
That is time.
I think, actually, Ben, you lead, because this is one of my groups and there's no point in me providing. Yeah, you go.
I think you just need a bit more of that experience narrative talk in your presentation. You're also using a lot of words that I did not understand because I don't know anything about this particular type of sea life. Our clients might, they might not. You know, they are museum curators. I don't think they're marine biologists, as far as I know.
Okay.
I don't know. So just be conscious of the kind of language that you use when you're talking about this particular type of sea life. So,
what kind of words should
I
use?
mean, like what is this thing?
It's a sea slug.
Okay.
A type of sea slug.
Okay, cool. I get that. Right. What were you calling it before, though?
It's a sea bunny, and it's got a bunch of names, so I don't know.
Which is a type of what you said?
It's also a type of nudibranch, which is a type of sea.
Right. So I think you said that, and I was like, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
So you give it its technical name, which is this, but you can think of it just as a type of sea slug. You know, you can stage down into.
So we're creating an interactive sea slug to teach kids about the. You're teaching them about the different senses of sea slugs. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. Okay. So that's kind of what you want to lead with. We're creating this display for the Queensland Museum to teach kids about the different types of senses that sea slugs have, and we're doing this by creating a large sea bunny.
I would say even you could in terms of how you stage into that, you could be like, we're trying to teach kids about how different sea life sense the environment. We've chosen to go with the sea bunny, which is a type, or the whatever you called it, which is a type of sea slug, because it has this very interesting way of sensing the world. You know what I mean? Like, you can start with, it can be more on that level, and then you can be to, we chose this as the...
Talk about it in terms of that narrative.
Definitely top level down to the specifics.
Yeah.
What I thought was getting really interesting was towards the end, you have this idea of collaborative play and all this other stuff. And that only ever came in the last like 10, 15 seconds, where I'm like, I would be highlighting that at the start. Like, we are, today I'm pitching a collaborative exhibition to teach kids about sea life. Specifically, we're looking at this type of sea slug. It has some really cool senses. And the way we're going to teach kids about this is through blah, 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 blah.
Buzzwords up front.
Yeah.
All right.
And it sets a lot of context. I'm like, I know that there's an interactive component. I know that there's a collaborative interaction going on. And yeah, so start with you lay out your foundation with these broader things. We're here to learn about sea life. We want them to learn about the way in which sea life perceives their world. You can bring the language back down in that way, and then go into, and we've done that through this object, which is the representation of the sort of sea bunny.
Yeah. What is the purpose of sensing? Is not just that a creature can sense. It's why is it able to sense? Well, it's sensing the things around it, the environment around it, and in this case, the children are a part of that world and environment. So.
You did make a reference to that with, say, like finding mates and stuff, but you can be maybe a little, and obviously it'll be different in a longer pitch to be a bit more expansive for how they use the senses and why, and then how that's represented through them.
Can you just read out what the text on box 4 says? I can't read that.
He pushed the sea bunny. There you go.
He pushed the sea bunny's
spicule.
Yes, spicule.
If you can't say it, don't put it in the presentation.
Yeah.
No, I think you could find out what they are. Think about how you can express them in layman's terms. The point I was going to make is you were talking about when kids press the button, right?
Right.
Sea slugs aren't covered in buttons; they're covered in spicules. So you want to talk about it in terms of when kids touch the sea slug's spicule, and then a very brief, spicules are blah 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 blah. Like 10 words.
I would even start with that. Be like, the sea bunny is covered in these sensory nodes called spicules. We've chosen to represent those with LED lights. As the child is entering the space, they see these light up, which encourages them, or they see these, giving some sort of output, which encourages the child to go over and interact as they run their hands over these sensory nodes, this kind of thing.
Yeah. You're talking about this in terms of the real sea life and in terms of the experience, not in terms of the technology or the little modules that you've used to make this happen. You want to sell the experience before you get into it's made of a giant ball covered in switches.
Also, I would say instead of pleasant sound, maybe like, think of it, because this creature's outputting it, right? It's giving off, it's almost like purring of a cat, kind of thing. Right. So talk about it in terms of its call. It's giving out a call of happiness, kind of thing, or find a language that's appropriate for your creature. But definitely, it's not just this abstract sound emanating from the roof. It's coming from the creature. And then I would also encourage you in that to find some way of talking about that sound if it's a part of, like, because it's not something you can represent visually very well. I like what you've done with the line work and the music notes, but even in the presentation or video, have a sound happen.
I was gonna say, that's just because that's what you're using to represent something. It's not, it makes a sound, it's doing something, it's expressing its whatever it is, and we're representing that through sound, through a happy sound, or
because likely to see
Same
bunnies
with the red light and the jellyfish.
Mm.
You know, it's about that narrative. It's about that experience. It's about the actual sea life rather than the technology.
Do we have one last volunteer to get in quick?
Yeah, please.
2 more, and we'll be.
And we won't give any feedback.
One comment from me, just to add to everything that has been said. I think in the second square of the storyboard, or some part of it at the beginning, you said, and it teaches children love. So if we go back to the concept of what experience is, the way you express that should be through the interaction, children learn.
Yeah.
And that will help, to contextualize everything, all the recommendations that have been given to you in terms of the speaker. I can't say the word. When children touches these things and there's this sensorial experience of the sound, they are learning by doing. Right. And this is a very nice project, yes. But the object is not teaching; it's inanimated. It's the child through the interaction learning, and that's what you are affording the child through this design. So power to you, express it.
Yeah.
We
do love these projects, by the way. We're just critiquing
it
the
just
presentation.
As like some positive feedback to sandwich off of that, I think it is, and you're one of my groups, so I'm going to be biased. But I think it is like a really nice project, and it has like a lot of that great stuff. And in the conversations we've had, I think there's, it's got a lot of richness to the experience. So make sure you're trying to sell that as best as you can. And avoid, just as a general rule, present these a few times and figure out where you're saying the words like, try and cut that as much as possible.
You'll be recording a video for your client pitch, so it's easier to weed that stuff out.
Yeah, but
if it ends up in the video, something's gone wrong.
Yes,
I do it a lot.
I do it often, and I've been trying to work on it. But likes, and ahs are very distracting. You didn't do it crazy. I wasn't like, but just as a broad thing for everybody.
I didn't even.
I didn't notice. It was just came to my mind then that
cool.
It happens.
Who wants to go last or second last? Someone.
Is that might have been all of the teams in the room, or is there one more team? There's one more team. Come, team.
There's at least one more team. There's
at least one more team. Yeah, I know there is.
Not sure.
James, pitch for us.
I'll do a pitch about, what have I got? I made this out of...
I think we have covered all the groups that are currently in here.
Oh, really?
Really?
Okay.
All right.
I mean, nobody has to present if they don't.
I hope it was useful feedback. I hope everyone's taking it on board. I mean, I can talk forever.
Amazing feedback, guys. Thank you so much.
No, I think there's a good rule in when you're writing a news article, and it applies in this as well, that you start your writing like this. So you start with your big, whatever the main point is you want people to read, because they may not make it through the whole article. They might go halfway through and quit. And then so as you're going, the information, like sell the whole story then to get people in, get them engaged. You want to tell them the crucial points then. And then as you tailor down, you can get to the maybe less relevant information. By the end, you're maybe tailing with the stuff that if I have to go to your posters or to the bill of materials, that's fine. That stuff is it's not about that story and selling so much. It's more just like clarifying points at the end.
Same as if you're in your elevator or your coffee line. If they get off at floor 2, if they get served very quickly, you want them to already have your core message. All the rest of the time is bonus.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Every extra minute is a bonus.
Like you've been in elevators with some very interesting people.
Yeah, Will's just crushing it in elevators.
I haven't.
Did you know it?
Although I did get my current design job by sitting next to a guy at
See?
a co-working space.
Yeah.
Anyway, my last point would be just make sure that you understand who your audience are and tailor the language appropriately. So like I was saying to the last person who presented, feel free to clarify things. If you're using technical words, tell me what they mean, and then you can keep using them for the rest of the presentation. But if you use terms that I don't understand, I'm immediately like
lost.
I don't know what he's talking about now.
There's a case to be made for also maybe referencing a technical term, but then referring to it colloquially, right? Like they have these specules which are like their eyes, and so blah blah blah.
Yeah, or sensory nodes, whatever else. You just talk about them like that for the rest of the presentation.
Yes, and I think that's actually a better point, and you'd be better off doing that, because otherwise then people have to remember a bunch of terms, and it's like reading a sci-fi book, and nobody wants that really.
Although you teach me new words.
Yeah,
fine.
But you can teach what the thing is, and this is called this, and then just keep going, and everybody will know what you're talking about. And
I'm terrified of like Googling nudie branch though. Like,
that's fair. But no, I think that was good.
There's some good presentations there for sure.
Thank you for offering that, Ben. That was a really good suggestion as well.
Yes, very good. And I'd encourage you to do that again with other team members, like other groups throughout this next week as well. We're out of class now, but that doesn't stop you from reaching out to your peers and say, hey, can we meet up? Can we present our pitch to you? And can you give us some feedback on it?
There's nothing in these presentations. There's nothing in these presentations that couldn't be like understood by anyone on the street, by your parents, by your partner. Just, explain it to a general audience.
Explain to people who haven't heard of it before.
Yes, and if they have questions, those are going to be questions that most people are going to have as well. And
I'm more than happy to do this again during next week's drop-in sessions as well.
Yeah, we love drop-ins.
I'm also happy, I'm sure we're happy to give you guys more than 90 seconds then at that point. You know, if you want to do a full 5-minute pitch, these will be recorded, so you'll have time to making a video, you can really iron out this information in greater detail. But it also preps you for any questions that the clients might have.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ben. I reckon if we would do this again, which I love, thank you very much for the idea, because I was able to spot things that I'm not doing well and to fix them. But if we do this again, I reckon it will take ages to do it in one room. I reckon we would probably have to break the room.
It'll depend how many people actually come into the drop-in sessions. I don't imagine it's going to be an entire class load of people, but I also have 2 drop-in sessions in the week, so there's more time.
There are several drop-in sessions in the week. I think all of us have a time. So
I've got 2 hours on Wednesday, I think.
Plenty time. One thing I want to say before everybody leaves is that the clients are not going to be present on Friday, but they're going to be viewing the videos. It could be the Rachel, or I can't remember the name of the manager of the Spark Lab, drop in at some point during the presentations. But the idea is that their teams, whenever they meet next time in a few days, they can look at Padlet and look at all the elements in there. And hopefully there's a project that they like and they would like to take forward. But that's an informal arrangement at the moment. But so don't worry, it still is, the presentation is just with us on Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys, for your feedback.
That's great.
Good weekend.
And thanks for the semester.
Thank you.
Yeah,
next week.
thanks.
We look forward to seeing you in the drop-ins and in the presentation.
Thanks.
So, tutor team, would you like to stay for 5 minutes?
Yep.
Yeah, I can do 5.
Yeah, so just in case I have 2 crazy dogs with me in case I have to mute in case they're too loud.
I need to